A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I want A+ English because it's so much fun. English education for you and everyone, so come along. Learn some grammar, learn a phrase, learn something new every day. Learn the A+ way. Hey, it's time to start the show. Are you ready? Good, 'cause here we go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I want A+ English.
Hello everyone and welcome to A+ English. I'm Mike.
And you're Mike.
I am Mike.
I
just
miss
said
you.
that.
And I am
It's
Laura.
nice to see you.
I
And
know.
you are the color of our topic today.
I know.
The old tradition of dying with persimmon.
What?
That doesn't mean people are in bed at the end of their life going, I only have a few minutes and here's a persimmon.
We're talking
I'm
about
dying with persimmon.
something happier.
No, yes. We're dying, not D-I-E, not that dying where your life ends. No, not that.
Like...
We're talking about changing the color of things. Like you dye your hair, you dye your clothes, you might dye your pet. Some people dye their dogs.
Really?
I think I've seen
Wow,
that. I wouldn't
okay.
do it, but some people do. So here's... yes.
I don't know if that's actually okay for the animal, like the pets.
No, I wouldn't do it. It's probably a lot of money and your dog doesn't care.
Exactly.
Anyways, let's talk about our warm-up question. Do you ever try to change the color of your clothes or hair? We could also just say it. Do you ever try to dye your clothes or hair? How do people do this?
Definitely not dye my clothes,
No.
but hair, of course.
That's not your natural hair color? You were born that way?
No.
I'm so amazed.
少来，这个一看就是染的啊。And you go to a hair salon, you
Yes.
get a stylist.
And it takes hours and costs thousands and thousands of dollars. I've never done it before, but I know.
Around
my wife goes.
$3,000 to $4,000. But
And like 6 hours, 8 hours.
Some people, they do highlights, right? So it takes, I think it's like 7 hours, I've heard.
Yeah.
And if they want a perm, that's like even worse.
Oh my God, that's right, where they curl your hair.
I never
that's a whole,
perm my hair.
That's next
Okay,
month.
we're not
We'll
talking
talk
about
that.
perm.
But we're
Okay.
talking about dyeing your clothes, dyeing your hair, and persimmon. Now, is there a connection here? You bet there is. And we're going to find out all about it in our article about dyeing, not that one, dyeing with persimmon. The old tradition of dyeing with persimmon. Warm-up question. Do you ever try to change the color of your clothes or hair? How do people do this?
Persimmons are delicious to eat. Using persimmon dye is an old tradition in some parts of Asia too. In Japan, people began using kakashibu dye in the 1400s. They fermented unripe persimmons to make it. Hakka people in Taiwan use persimmon dye too. However, they use the skins after they dry ripe persimmons. Persimmon dye colors can be yellow, orange, or brown. The colors become darker in the sun over time. The dye helps keep out bugs and water. People use persimmon dye on fabric, wood, and paper. You can take a persimmon dyeing class at the Shimpu Persimmon Dye House. Or just go shopping for some beautiful persimmon-dyed clothes, bags, and cards there. All
right, so let's talk about the fruit. This is a fruit, right? The fruit in question, the fruit we're talking about in our article, it's persimmons. So persimmons are delicious to eat. I would describe a persimmon, but I'm not sure I've ever eaten one. Whenever I see them, they always look like fake tomatoes.
I was going to say that they look like tomatoes.
A wooden tomato, someone made it and just painted it and like, oh, look, it's an art tomato.
I see.
But I don't know.
I can see that connection.
Yeah, I don't
but they
know.
taste totally different because they're sweeter.
Are they good?
They are actually, but I don't like softer ones. I like them when they're like kind of like the crunchy.
And do you just eat them? them, or do you always put them with something, or cook them, or do something?
No, we actually just cut them in slices and eat them.
Maybe I think I've had them in like a dessert or something, like a persimmon flavor.
They're really good.
I should try them. Anyways, we know persimmons. They're very a local fruit here, kind of an exotic fruit in Canada or other places, but here in Taiwan, they are not hard to find. So, of course, people eat them. We know that.
Yummy.
But then we learned something else. Using persimmon dye is an old tradition in some parts of Asia too.
Oh, okay. Exactly. 我本来想说 persimmon 不是就是吃茄子那个我今天有没有穿起来很柿子的感觉？我刚才突然讲茄子，因为它长得像番茄，所以在亚洲的某些地区，我们会用一个东西叫做那个柿染，就是柿子的柿，然后染法的染，也是一项古老的传统。那其中我们提到的 dye， 刚刚一直提到，no not that dye， 不是死掉，是 dye，
that one，
就是给什么东西染色啦，或者当作名词，它有染料的意思。而 persimmon 当然就是我们一直在讲的柿子。And we also saw our very first word power word in that sentence, which is the word tradition.
Ooh, I like that word. It's got a lot of tradition behind it.
That's right. Tradition 这个字是个名词，就是传统。像是如果你们家族有一些传统要做的事情，就是 family tradition。那如果要把它变成形容词，就说这个人他很传统，我们则要用这个字 traditional。OK， 在字尾后面加 al。那刚刚有提到家族的传统，像是 David is carrying on the family tradition by becoming a doctor。他可能是医生家族，所以世家大家都可能每一个人要当医生这样子的一个传统 family tradition。我们来看一下单字例句。A common tradition on Chinese New Year is to eat fish. That's right， 年年有余。春节时吃鱼是一个常见的传统习俗哦。
All right, and then we learned something else about this tradition. It's not just here in Taiwan that people have been doing this sort of thing. It says in Japan, people began using kakishibu dye in the 1400s.
Kakishibu.
Kakishibu.
That's just persimmon dye. Okay.
Yeah. That's what it means. Okay.
Okay. 所以在日本，人们在15世纪开始使用 kakishibu dye， 但它就是释染的意思啦，但是它是日文。
And how did they make it in Japan? How did they make
kakishibu dye?
Thank you. They fermented unripe persimmons to make it.
Oh,
so this is when you have way too many persimmons for your persimmon party. You keep some of them. You make sure they are unripe. That would be like kind of young, a little hard.
Yeah, you can't eat
not
those.
Quite sweet, like an unripe banana is green and it's not quite ready to eat. So those early baby persimmons, keep them around and let them ferment, and then you can end up with
kakishibu dye.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank God I learned my Japanese.
Good job.
OK， 所以他们将没有成熟的柿子发酵来制作。原来这个就是释染的过程啊。Ferment 其实就是使什么发酵，它是一个动词。Unripe 就是成熟，所以前面加个字首 on 就是没有就是未成熟的，这是一个形容词。
That's right. And overripe. Don't forget overripe. If something is overripe, then it's getting a little old. Your overripe banana is turning black or brown now. It's got to eat it really fast. So unripe, overripe, no good. Ripe, perfect. Back to the article. Let's bring it back to Taiwan. It says Hakka people in Taiwan use persimmon dye too.
I'm not
So our
surprised.
客家 friends.
Yeah, 客家朋友。所以在台湾的客家人，他们也是使用这个释染哦，所以不止在日本，我们台湾也有呢。
There's a lot of interesting traditions and folk arts coming from the Hakka people, right? However, it says the Hakka people, it's a little different than the Japanese.
kakishibu dye.
That's right. However, that's the Hakka people, use the skins after they dry ripe persimmon. That sounds a little smarter. Maybe they peel the persimmon, eat it, and then just keep the outside, the skins, to make the dye. They get to have their persimmons and dye too.
Yeah, 2 in 1. OK. 不过呢，他们是使用风干过后成熟柿子的果皮哦。所以对，刚刚 Mike 说的没有错，我有想到这个，他们可以吃里面的果子，然后呢，皮就用来这个可以染东西，很棒。 OK， 不过我们先来看一下 skin 这个字哦。它这里不是皮肤的意思哦。Let's check it out. Not that skin kind of different. Okay, that's like human skin. 我们都知道 skin 一般指的就是皮肤，对不对？刚刚 Mike 好像在抓自己的皮肤，是不是痒痒的？但是在本课是当做果皮的意思哦，所以像是那个马铃薯皮，我们也可以用这个字 potato skin。其实那种炸的马铃薯皮超好吃。OK， 那 skin 是名词哦。那我们来看一下单字例句。You can't eat the skin of that banana. Take it off before you eat the fruit. 可是我好像听说吃香蕉皮会治忧郁症，会比较开心。好啦，那例句是说你不能吃那个香蕉皮，在你吃这种水果之前要先把皮剥掉哦。OK， 所以刚刚课文是说，不过他们使用风干过后成熟柿子的果皮 and ripe。OK，I love it when fruits are ripe， 就是成熟的，它是一个形容词。
Absolutely. When they're ripe, they're at their best and healthiest too, right? It's best to eat fruit when they're ripe. They taste good and they're good for you. Back to persimmon and the dye. So now we know that we can make persimmon dye in a few different ways. Why would we make persimmon dye? This is a good question. Or what will it do for us when we're trying to dye things? Well, let's find out. No big surprise. Persimmon dye colors can be yellow, orange, or brown. It's just kind of an orangey fruit, so I would be surprised if it came out purple. That would be a big surprise, right? So it's always something similar to the color of the fruit. That's how natural dyes usually work. Yellow, orange, brown, all kind of similar colors.
I can see that. OK， 所以释染的颜色有黄色啦、橘色啦以及棕色，这些色调是比较相近的啦。
And the colors become darker in the sun over time.
Oh,
that's
cute. OK， 所以随着日晒，颜色会渐渐的变深。这里我们就来看一下 dark, which is also our word power word.Dark 这是一个形容词哦，在本课是有深色的意思，比方像是我通常不敢去尝试太深的颜色，像是深紫色，你们敢穿吗 ？Dark purple 或者是深蓝色，当然就是 dark blue， 这个应该还好，或是深红色，我也好像 not a big fan， 没有很爱 dark red。那有时候我们可能会说，这个人他可能头发深色一点比较好看，我们就可以这么说 She looks better with her hair dark. 我们来看一下单字例句的用法。Jane often wears dark clothes, but today she wore a pink shirt. Nice. Jane 常常穿深色的衣服，但她今天穿了一件粉红色的衬衫呢。And I believe we mentioned the phrase over time, 就是逐渐地这样的意思。So over time they turn brown.
I see. So your yellow
darker.
t-shirt, if you dry it in the sun for a few months or whatever, it might turn orange or brown. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And apart from just having a beautifully colored piece of clothing when you use persimmon dye, there's something else quite amazing that it can do for you. The dye helps keep out bugs and water.
Wow. I want that dye.
If I go out with mosquitoes and rain, my persimmon t-shirt will keep me dry and bite-free.
You don't need a bug spray though.
I have to try this. This is quite amazing.
I want to get that.
There are some things like garlic and other things that insects don't like. Right? So maybe it's
you
just
don't
the
want
smell.
to wear garlic.
Well, maybe you don't smell it, but they smell it. Or maybe it's the color that they don't like.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay.
And keeping out water, that's also pretty cool.
我们觉得这蛮神奇的，就是这个染料有助于驱虫，还有防水耶。Keep out， 然后 somebody or something 这个片语就是使什么留在外面，或是使什么不进入哦。And bug， 这个字 I hate bugs。我们来看一下 ，That's our last word power word.
Okay.
本课的 bug 就是指小虫子啦，它是一个名词。那像是我们讲那种就是可能你去外面啊，有很多蚊子啊，或者是一些虫子啊，那你想要有一些防蚊剂或是驱虫剂，我们就可以用 bug spray 来表示。那有时候如果看到头发磨人头发上面有个小虫子，可能就会这么说 Hang on, there's a bug in your hair. Let me get it out for you. 等等，你的头发里面有小虫子，让我帮你把它拿出来哟。 看一下单字例句的用法。Don't open the window or the bugs will fly in. 不要打开窗户，否则虫子会飞进来哦。
All right, so not only can you use persimmon dye on your clothes, I mean, that's not a big surprise. We dye clothes all the time. You can use it on a few other things that are a little more interesting. People use persimmon dye on fabric. That's cloth, clothes. Clothes are made of fabric. No surprise. Wood and paper.
Paper.
So you can make yourself a persimmon-colored suit, sit on your persimmon-colored chair and read your persimmon-colored book, and people will call you weird.
I want a persimmon desk.
But at least the bugs and the rain will stay away from you. So
That's a good idea.
There you go, you're cool.
所以人们会在棉织啊、木头啊以及纸类上使用释染哦。Fabric 这个字其实就是布啊，或是织物这样的意思，它是一个名词，像衣服就是这个类。
And how can you learn how to do all of these wonderful things? You can actually take a class. You can take a persimmon dyeing class at the Shinpu Persimmon Dye House.
Okay.
Dye house. I don't like the sound of that.
Same.
Sounds like a scary
I don't want to go.
Oh, but it's spelled differently. I feel
D-Y-E.
much better. So go to the Shinpu Persimmon Dye House. They will show you how to do amazing things with persimmon, not just eat them.
Maybe they should use the word color then. It's simpler to say as well.
Color house?
Okay, well, 你可以参，如果你们真的觉得很好奇，也想要自己来试试看哦，释染，你可以参加新浦释染坊所开设的释染课。那这里呢，其实我们有用到分词当形容词的用法哦。如果这个形容词的名词会用主动执行的动作，就有含主动进行的意味的现在分词当形容词。哦，这样讲很复杂，但是我讲个例句，你们会比较清楚。The beautiful woman wearing a red sweater is my mom. 穿着红色毛衣的美丽的女子，这样当做就是现在分词当形容词的 wearing， 就是我的妈妈咯。
All right, so there you go. You can learn how to do things at the Shinpu Persimmon Dye House, or just go shopping for some beautiful persimmon dyed clothes, bags, and cards there. That's right. Even if you don't want to learn how to make your own persimmon dyed products, you can buy persimmon dyed products. Try them out, give them as gifts. I'm sure they're wonderful for birthdays and Christmas. And if you love persimmons, love the color, and want to learn more about the amazing fruit or what you can do with it, that's the place to go.
I want a persimmon dyed bag.
We're going tomorrow morning.
OK， 所以或者呢，你如果不想要 DIY， 不想要做这种东西，你就单纯去逛逛那边美丽的释染衣服、包包和卡片，就可以支持他们哦。OK，persimmon dyed。OK， 这里呢就是形容词是被动的意味 ，OK， 所以过去分词当形容词这样的用法。那最后呢，我们刚刚有提到就是 go shopping or go do something， 就是 VING， 表示从事某个活动。这也是今天的 Magic Box 要教大家哦。Well, it's the end of today's article. Let's now go to Magic Box first, and after that, we'll be right back for our review time game.
Okay, so it's not over.
No,
Okay.
no.
Magic Box.
Hello， 大家好，我是艾赛。上个礼拜呢，就是下班之后呢，就是跟朋友呢，我们去一间 bar， 然后我们呢就是喝了一杯，然后聊聊天哦。I went to a fancy bar with my friend yesterday. The food and drinks there were really great. 那家 bar 呢，就是非常的高级，就是装潢以及它里面的整个布置呢，整个气氛呢，其实都非常的舒服哦。那在刚刚那个例句里面当中呢，大家应该有发现哦 ，go to 后面呢，其实我们是要加上一个地点哦。那表示的意思呢，其实就是指去某处这样的一个意思。那我们用这个 go to 呢，我们来造一个例句式看看哦，像是 Andy goes to the supermarket 2 times a week， 表示的意思呢，就是 Andy 一周呢，他是会去超市2次的。那当然，我们常见的这个动词 go 的这个用法，除了后面呢，我们可以加上一个地点之外，其实它还有另外一个用法，就是我们后面可以加上一个 VING， 它表示的意思呢，指的就是从事某项活动啦。比方像是呢 go swimming， 表示的意思就是去游泳，那 go shopping 就是去购物嘛，那 go dancing 指的就是去跳舞等等。那像是在今天的这个文章中提到 ，You can take a persimmon dyeing class at the Shinpu Persimmon Dye House。 or just go shopping for some beautiful persimmon dyed clothes, bags, and cost it。表示的意思呢，就是你可以参加就是新埔释然坊所开的释然课，或者呢单纯去逛逛那边美丽的，就是他们有非常漂亮的释然的衣服、包包以及卡片哦。那最后呢，我们帮大家补充一下哦。假设呢，如果你今天这个活动啊，或者是你要从事的这项运动，它中间是如果是有需要使用名词的时候呢，我们记得要把这个名词放在中间哦。比方像是呢 ，go mountain climbing 指的意思就是去爬山，那我们就是把 mountain 放在 go 跟 climbing 的中间。那或者呢，我们可以说 go horse riding 指的就是呢去骑马。好啦，那今天介绍几个动词 go 的用法，希望大家都有学起来咯。我们下次见，拜拜。
Review time.
All right, we have a very short amount of time for our review. Remember the 4 words we learned today: tradition, skin, dark, and bug. And since we have a little time, we'll play a little game. And so I'm going to ask you for some synonyms.
Ooh,
words that
相似字。
mean kind of the same thing as the word. I will give you the synonym.
Okay.
You will guess which word we learned today
Sure.
I'm talking about. Insect.
Oh, this is easy. 小虫子就是 bug.
How about ritual?
Ritual.
Right.
仪式的 tradition.
Tradition. These are rituals. How about unlit?
Dark.
Murky. Dark.
就是没有
that's a good
发
one.
光，没有亮
And
的。
a pelt.
这个很难诶 skin.
Skin. You know, sometimes an animal pelt
对。
would be like you kill the animal. You
Oh, I don't wanna
use the
hear
skin.
the details.
No, we're not talking about that. But we can also talk about the skin of a fruit and
Yes.
the skin of an animal. But it's a little different. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We've had a good time talking to you about persimmons. I'm going to the store to get some. We're going to dye some tomorrow. We hope you enjoy them and check out the Shinpu Persimmon Place. It's really cool. And we'll be back with more great stuff soon.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
The old tradition of dyeing with persimmon. Warm-up question. Do you ever try to change the color of your clothes or hair? How do people do this?
Persimmons are delicious to eat. Using persimmon dye is an old tradition in some parts of Asia too. In Japan, people began using kakashibu dye in the 1400s. They fermented unripe persimmons to make it. Hakka people in Taiwan use persimmon dye too. However, they use the skins after they dry ripe persimmons. Persimmon dye colors can be yellow, orange, or brown. The colors become darker in the sun over time. The dye helps keep out bugs and water. People use persimmon dye on fabric, wood, and paper. You can take a persimmon dyeing class at the Shinpu Persimmon Dye House. Or just go shopping for some beautiful persimmon dyed clothes, bags, and cards there. Word power.
Tradition. Tradition. A common tradition on Chinese New Year is to eat fish. A common tradition on Chinese New Year is to eat fish. Skin. Skin. You can't eat the skin of that banana. Take it off before you eat the fruit. You can't eat the skin of that banana. Take it off before you eat the fruit. Dark. Dark. Jane often wears dark clothes, but today she wore a pink shirt. Jane often wears dark clothes, but today she wore a pink shirt. Bug. Bug. Don't open the window or the bugs will fly in. Don't open the window or the bugs will fly in.
认识字汇
Ferment. Ferment. Unripe. unripe, ripe, ripe. Fabric, fabric.